Hello, welcome to another episode of Inside Out Alignment, your platform for self-discovery and creativity. Your host, Mary Tabra, is here, and today we're blessed to have with us Mary Seifert, who is a certified life coach and owner of Self-Love Expressions and Radical Self-Love Bootcamps. Mary, thank you for accepting our invitation. Thanks for being here with us.
Thanks for having me.
Beautiful. Mary, you talk about self-love a lot. Can you please tell us a little bit about what is self-love?
Self-love is the love that you have for yourself. It's not in a narcissistical way, but in a way where you have enough love and respect for yourself that you have boundaries. You don't settle for less than you deserve. You know your worth. You stand up for who you are, and you have to get through fear and compassion, and especially for yourself. And there's a lot of work to do to get to self-love. But the most part is knowing that what your worth is.
Right. Knowing what your worth is. How do you know what your worth is?
Well, if you would have asked me 5 years ago, did I love myself? I'd have said, yeah, of course I do. Because I didn't really know what it took or what it really even was. But I had a lot of internal judgment that, a lot of guilt. I went to Catholic school for 12 years, just the way I was raised, guilt, shame that I put on myself, and how you internalize all that, how your thoughts internalize it. So when that happens, you get into bad relationships, you get into a lot of bad everythings, but you don't really know why, because I guess I was too busy blaming everybody else. Wasn't me. I'm perfect. I'm good. It's everything's your fault. And then, I had, my kids were all grown. They all left. I moved to Arizona and I was by myself for the first time. And I realized that there was nobody left to blame for anything. And I also realized only I can make myself happy, not anybody else. And when I realized I couldn't blame anybody for anything else, it kind of hit me really super hard. And I realized kind of at that moment that I hated myself. That I literally hated myself, because sort of everything flashed in front of my eyes about, I was a domestic violence survivor, but how I ended up taking on that and, being very codependent and taking a lot of stuff out on my children by yelling at them and not being there for them in a way that they needed to. So I felt like I became the abuser. And I wondered why nobody wanted, to be around me, So I realized I had a lot of work to do. And I started doing the work. And the hardest part for me was forgiving myself for all that I had taken on when I stopped blaming everybody else. So I saw everything for the first time. And, I had to do a lot of work, but forgiveness for myself was the hardest thing that I did. And once I did that and learned to have compassion for myself, the love just started to grow and grow and grow inside. And that was my biggest. There's a lot of other work you have to do, resentment, fear, perception, all that. But mostly for me, it was internal judgment. And I think that's what it is for a lot of people. And I think that's why a lot of people are looking for happiness somewhere else. Like it's your husband's responsibility to make you happy, or your boyfriend, or I'm not happy, so it's because of you. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Like shifting the blame on others, except looking at self and having honest conversation with ourselves, or looking at what we're doing.
Exactly. So my first husband, I was, he was very abusive. I don't want to get into all that, but he was very abusive. So I took my self-worth that I thought that I did have a little, but then and he even destroyed it more. And I'm not blaming him for that. You know what I mean? I got out of it, but I never did the work for myself. And a domestic violence person will, make you feel like you're crap. Right. And you start to believe it because you don't know why, And it just traveled with me through all my relationships, and everything I did for many, many years. And I was a single mom for so long that I didn't have time to work on myself ever. And I think that's a lot of people's issues. We're running to work, we're doing this, we're trying to get our kids to soccer, whatever, but when do we ever take time for ourselves? That's a huge self-love thing. You have to take the time to do nice things for yourself. And I don't mean just, go get your nails done. You have to take the time to work on yourself internally as well as on the outside.
Right.
It's a new haircut that's beautiful isn't going to change how you feel inside. It might change for a moment, right? But then it all comes back later.
I love that. I love that analogy. It's just so true. Like you hit it right on the head. Love that.
Well,
So,
my hatred for myself that wasn't conscious of when I was, in victim mode, blaming everybody else. That's what basically destroyed me and took me a long time to figure out. I blamed my bad relationships. Well, he was an alcoholic and he beat me up. So it's all his fault. And then the next one, it was his fault. And, everybody's fault but mine, because I didn't have time to look inside. I didn't want to either, I guess. That's what blame is, but you really are unconscious of that. Most people are so unconscious of that. Unless something, some kind of tower moment, pulls you down and you have to really figure it out. And most of us have plenty of those in our lifetime.
we definitely do. We definitely do. So during that time when you were like really blaming, everybody else, how were you feeling? How were your feelings? And how did you handle yourself during that difficult time? And because being in such a relationship and then having kids and being abused, I can only imagine the pain. And then you have to work, then you have to take care of your kids and all that. That's a difficult place to be in.
Mm-hmm. Let's just repeat the question one more time. How did I
Yeah, so
feel?
how did you handle yourself, like being in that space where you were, even though you were
Yeah.
blaming everybody else, everything else that you were doing? How did you go along? Like, how were your days?
Mostly I was angry.
Hmm.
I don't know if I could swear on your show, but mostly I'd say I was a bitch.
You're
That's
just
how
being
I went
you.
on with my days. Huh?
I say you're just being you, so I can't
Yeah.
prevent you from saying what you've got to say.
Yeah. Mostly that's how best way I can explain it. And it was hard because I never took a moment, to even think it was maybe my fault. You know what I mean? And if something bad would happen, I would run. That was my way. I would just leave. Like I was married 3 times. They only lasted each one 5 years. When things got bad enough, bye-bye, I'm running. Same thing would happen when I lived in California, and that was 11 years ago. I moved here. And that's when I really started my transformation, because that's when I was alone and my kids were grown and I had to really figure it out. And I was like, wow. So mostly, I guess, to answer your question, I was angry. I wasn't very nice and I had very little friends because, who wants to deal with somebody that's not very nice? You know what I mean? And I didn't really care about having friends because I didn't have time to have friends. Do you know what I mean? And I wasn't really nice to my kids. I yelled a lot. And to me, that's emotional, that's verbally abusive. I didn't call them names or ever touch them or anything like that, but I yelled all the time. I yelled all the time. And, I put them through a rough childhood because of how they were treated. They weren't nurtured like a mother's supposed to nurture their child, because if you don't love yourself, you have no capacity to love anyone else. That's why you look for happiness everywhere else. You think it's everybody else's fault. You know what I mean? And I transformed my life and really have a lot of self-love for myself now. But do you think my kids are just amazingly accepting of that? No, because, you know, they had become codependent because I was at the time. So they're doing a lot of their own work. My youngest son, who just turned 21, he got the best me. You know, so he was very accepting, but the other two, my older girls, no. I mean, it's rough for them because, you know, they didn't have the mother that they needed or that they wanted or thought that I was supposed to be like. And I, you know, I felt really, really guilty for that for a really long time. But, you know, I had to own it. You know, I had to own it and I had to tell them I'm doing my best. I hope that, you know, I can be the mother that you want from now on. So I work really hard at that now, but they're grown. So, you know, they got to figure it out for themselves too. But I see a lot of self-worth issues they have themselves because of I didn't teach it to them. So that was difficult for me to get past, but I did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, beautiful right there. So when you did, you said you had to forgive yourself. So the process of forgiving yourself, how long did it take, that process of finally
Um,
accepting to forgive yourself?
I think it took a long time. I think that I did a lot of work on it, and a couple of times, probably twice, I thought I was good, and then something happened, and it took me back down again. And I can explain that if you'd like me to.
Sure.
Um, the first time was uh, when my mom died. She died about a year and a half ago, and I, her and I didn't get along really good because I blamed her for everything. You know, one time when I was 11, I asked her if I could vacuum, and she said, "No, it's okay. Your sisters will do it because they do it right, and you'll just do it half-assed." Well, I had this story in my head because she was kind of critical of, okay, well, I'm half-assed. So part of my self-esteem right there went, you know what I mean? So I carried that story with me for a long, many, 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 many years. And after she passed away, even though our relationship was great for the last 4 years after that, since I had done a lot of work, I started beating myself up again for all the time I missed with her, for all the time I took away from her, for all the terrible things that, you know, I said and did and all that. And so it all came back and I had to do work again. I had, you know, because my family was always saying it's okay because like all she did was talk about how wonderful you were for a year to all of us. We were sick of hearing it. And I'm like, well, you know what I mean? So I started beating myself up again because anyone who tells you, and if any of you out there say, I'm so hard on myself, that is not a good sign. When you're hard on yourself, you're hard on yourself for a reason because there's something in there that you're holding that you're not getting. Because I always said that. No one can beat me up more than I can. And I would never say that now because I don't beat myself up anymore. But that brought me down. So I knew I had to get back on it and figure it out. Like, why are you going there again? What do you need to do? And then I had to do a domestic violence. I was a keynote speaker for domestic violence. And even though I did a great speaking on it, when I got home, I felt very judged. And my son was there filming it. And I said, man, I feel so judged. And he's like, why? There was like 100 women there. I don't think you were judged at all. And I said, oh my God, you're right. I was judging myself because that was the first time I said out loud that I took responsibility for my life, that I told them I became the abuser of my children. You know what I mean? And when I heard myself saying that in front of a lot of people, it took me about 3 months again to do the work because I just never heard it. You know, I knew it and I worked on it, but I never heard it. So I guess we're all on our journey, you know, and we always will be because right when you think, you know, that you're doing so great, I see that that life will kick you in the butt. You know what I mean? But if you have the skills and the knowledge and you've done the work, you can get right back on that quickly again, which is what I had done before that. So all that work, I can find myself in these, when I find myself in a situation a little bit, and starting to go down a little bit, I'm like, oh, okay, stop there. And mostly for me, I go into solitude for a little bit. Solitude is what helps me more than anything, because solitude is how I reflect. And I spend a lot of time in solitude, figuring it out. And that's how it comes to me. That's how I do it.
Yeah,
You're not
definitely.
you're not going to do it while you're working. You're not going to do it when you're too busy with your kids. You're not going to do it when you're out partying or you're out all the time with friends. No, you got to spend some time with you.
And I love that precision, you know, spending time with you. Yeah, that is so important. Like all those noise outside, all the distraction, everything else, you're having that special and honest time with yourself, you know, being able to really reflect on a lot at the same time working on yourself just as you did, and to get out of that. Yeah. Thank you so much for your courage and for sharing that with us. Because even when you spoke about, you know, when your keynote, when you had that talk, and then you felt like you were being judged, I felt like how do you call it? I felt like that energy in my body. I would say what spoke to me was actually the help you were bringing to many people out there that you did not realize. Because you cannot imagine how many people could relate to what you were talking about. And looking at your courage, you know, standing up there and sharing your experience, owning it. People just don't do that. So really, I really thank you for that, because I am sure many people were like, oh, I'm not alone. And if Mary could go through that, and then now she's here, she's talking to us, then I think I can do something. I need to stop complaining and, you know, take control or take charge or take ownership of my life, rather than, you know, complaining and blaming everybody else. And that's the beauty of coaching. That's the beauty of speaking. That's the beauty of taking responsibility.
Right.
Right.
That's the only way you're going to make a change in your life, is to take responsibility. That's the first step of consciousness. It's victim mode. Taking responsibility for your life. You will never change until you do.
Right. And you
So
also
now,
talk.
so now if I feel
Sorry.
like I'm blaming anything, a book, anything, I'm like, oh no, victim mode. I'm not living there. Not living there.
I love that. And you also talk of the 4 stages of consciousness. What were those 4 stages?
Let me see if I can remember real quick exactly what they're called. The first one is victim mode, and taking responsibility for your life. It's how you wake up. That's the first step of waking up. But once you wake up and realize you have to take responsibility for your life, and there's no one to blame for anything but you, because we're all responsible for our own reactions. Nobody else ever is. You know, I was in an abusive relationship. Is it all his fault? No, I didn't need to stay in it for 5 years, but I knew it before I got into it, but I did it anyways. I'm taking responsibility for that too, right? And I'm not giving it to anyone else. There was a part of me that was in that relationship. Okay. So I've worked through all that. And then the second one is I am, meaning you've already taken responsibility. So there's no more blame left on anybody else. I am responsible. The third and the fourth I get stuck on. I can't
That's
think of the
fine.
names of them, huh?
I say that's fine.
But it's funny about the stages of consciousness. What I can tell you is, you know, you have a left brain and a right brain. The left brain is your conscious and your subconscious. That's the one that plays all our tricks on us, right? We sabotage, we think thoughts that aren't true. We live in our thoughts, which are all bad, right? Because our brain's just a robot. It just knows what you've got programmed in there. The right side of your brain is what they call God's mind. So we're all born geniuses, but life changes us, right? And we're not geniuses anymore. I thought when they said you were born in God's image and likeness, because I'm a Catholic schoolgirl, I thought that meant that he made what I was supposed to look like, right? Like, why do you have to give me big legs or whatever? You know what I mean? Like, why couldn't I? That kind of thing. That's what I always thought. But really, we're all one. We're all one. So that's the side of the brain that they call God's mind, which is basically also your intuition. So if you can shut down the subconscious and the conscious and tap into the right side, which is God's mind, all the answers are there, all the answers. But you can't shut that down till you go through all the steps. So I had a near-death experience where I went into the light, and it was the most amazing feeling that I ever felt in my entire life. I got a concussion at the gym, and basically I was having like a heart attack in the middle of the night, like once my adrenaline went down, because my blood pressure was so low. I wasn't getting any blood to my blood pressure. I think when I got to the hospital was 39 over, I don't know, 36, something like that. It was just super low. And I went into the light, and it was the most amazing feeling because it felt like the highest high you'll ever know. And like the light was just so bright, and I could feel it just warm my body from my toes all the way up to my head. And then I remember when it got to my head, I said, oh my God, that's it, I'm done. So my brain was shutting down. I knew I was dying. And then I woke up and my son was taking me to the hospital. But I went into that light, and I noticed when I went through my program and I got to that part of consciousness, the same thing happened. That was all shut down. So I feel like from that near-death experience, I can go there because I know what it feels like to have this side shut down. And somebody on TED Talks, I think 2 people talked about the same thing when they had near-death experiences, when that side of their brain shuts down and all you have is that like amazing place that you're in. So that's the 4th stage, is being there.
Wow. Wow. Beautifully put. So I know you also practice gratitude.
Right. Want me to talk about that?
Yes. Why gratitude?
Yeah. So a lot of part of being in victim mode and the way I was for so long, because I didn't like myself and all the blame and everything, was I was never grateful for anything because my head was always stuck in all the bad stuff. You know, like I'm miserable because my husband's an idiot. I'm miserable because, you know, my kids aren't doing what they're supposed to do or whatever. You know, I'm just freaking miserable. So a practice that I started that really helped was gratitude. So you write down every morning what you're grateful for. That automatically starts you out in a good place during the day. But I noticed on days where it's not such a good day, I'll sit there and say, okay, I'm going to write down 30 things I'm grateful for. The first time I had somebody tell me to do that, I was like, you got to be freaking crazy. I can't even think of 3 right now, you know? And it's amazing because once you start and you get past like 5, it all starts to come out. All these like, and it takes you to a completely other place. You know, because you don't even think you have 30 things to be grateful for, right? But you find out you do, and it just changes everything. Changes everything. So, you know, anytime where I'm feeling a little bit like, you know, it's not my day or everything's going bad, I always sit down and do the 30. Because 5's easy, 4's easy, but once you get past all that, it's like, wow, you know, it changes everything. And same with the law of attraction. You know, whenever you give, it opens the law of circulation, right? You get back. You can't get anything if you're not grateful. That's where it all starts. And it has a lot to do with loving yourself too, being grateful. You're grateful for what you've had and what you have and what's about to come. That puts a good thing right here in your heart about feeling good for yourself, because you're not negative. You're not complaining about anything. You know, and complaining helps nothing. That's just being a victim.
Yeah, victim mindset. It takes us nowhere for real. It only makes things worse for us. And so right now, after like when you found yourself and got to that place of peace and, you know, forgiving yourself and How did it feel? I know we've talked about so much pain and so much this. Let's talk about something exciting now. When you got to that place, how did your body feel? How did you, just try to explain that to us?
Amazing. It didn't come right away.
Hmm.
It came slowly. And I think after the last two times I had to do the work, I finally got to the point where I'm never going to settle for anything. Do you know what I mean? I'm not going to settle for anything that's not working for my betterment. You know what I mean? And so it's an amazing feeling. It almost feels like going into that right side of your brain because you're not holding anything in there anymore. You've released it all. You've let go of it all. You've done the work. So there's none of that left. So for the first time in my life, I feel so happy and so at peace. And I don't look for it anywhere else. Maybe my child will come over and be in a bad mood and be all whatever. It doesn't affect me because I know those are her issues and I'm not taking on her issues. I can be nice to her and I can listen to her and I can help her, but I'm not taking on her issues because that would be letting her accept the blame, right, for how she feels. Like, I don't care, I was in a bad mood or whatever. So I'll listen and I'll accept, but I don't have to take on all that stuff anymore. So I don't take anything personal anymore. And that's an amazing feeling because I always used to. Everything was always about me. If somebody was having a bad day, it was my fault. I did something bad or whatever. And now I don't take it on because I know that's their issue. That's their journey. I'm good. And it's amazing because I have never, I love being by myself. I'm single. I'm not looking for a spouse. Do you know what I mean? Like, I love my privacy. I love my time alone. I like being with people too, but I don't ever get bored. I don't watch TV. I don't ever get bored. People say, man, I'm just so bored with this COVID stuff. I didn't get bored once. I started making jewelry. I started doing all kinds of things because I don't know. I'm just happy. I feel amazing. It's the most peace I've ever had in my life.
I love that. I love that. And so happy for you too. So you decided to open this radical self-love bootcamp. What is it about and what are you? Because this will help most people maybe who are going through, self-love issues, low self-esteem and things like that. So, they can reach out to you and see how maybe they can get some of those and, go on the other side where they would love to be. So how does this work and how are you doing this?
Well, I have a 6-week, an 8-week, and a 12-week boot camp. The 6-week is a little more intense because I try to get a lot more into that. So those are 90 minutes. We start out with a quiz so that I can see where they're at. And then I take them through all the stages of, that I went through of self-love. So I want to see where their strengths and weaknesses are with what they're good at about themselves and what they're not. And that kind of helps me with where we're going to go. So a lot of times, we have to go through fear. Somebody might, not trust themselves enough to be, or love themselves enough to, they're afraid of everything. They're going to fail. It's not going to work. We got to get rid of that negativity. So we go through fear, perception. We have to change our stories, which it's not easy. That also requires some work. And then we go through, gratitude and the law of attraction and changing all your perceptions about that. And then the biggest one is working through forgiveness. And mostly it's forgiving. Forgiveness means for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
For you. It's a choice. It's a choice like everything else. Self-love is a choice. It's a practice and a choice. And by the end of it, you'll have all the tools, to make the choice and to already have it because you've worked through all of it. So you're going to learn to forgive other people that you hold resentment for. You're going to learn to forgive yourself. Not everyone's like me, and it's all about, their hardest was the internal judgment, the shame and the guilt. But shame is like a killer. It lives inside you and metastasizes until it, turns into cancer and almost destroys you, which is what was going on with me. But not everybody has all that. Somebody might just, have a lot of trauma from something from the past that they can't forgive, or whatever. So we spend a lot of time on that. And then I do go through the 4 stages of consciousness as well. And so you learn all the tools. And, you know, I'm not the kind that's gonna, I call it radical boot camp because I'm pretty intense. And that's how I teach it. You know, it's like you follow, you do what you're supposed to do. There's homework. It's work. It's not easy. But if you want to change, you'll do the work. You know, it's called just do it. You either want it or you don't. And so I don't like to play around with somebody who doesn't really want it.
Definitely.
You know what I mean? Like I can't hold somebody accountable. They have to want it. If you want it, I can get you there. Changing your life is not easy, but it's a choice. It's a choice.
That's true. You have to be committed. Sometimes we are just interested.
Right.
Yeah,
You're
but not
interested,
but
fine.
not right, not ready, not ready to commit.
Right. And I have a quiz that I can give everyone, or a 31-day challenge to see where you're at. Because some people might not be sure, like I was, and I thought I loved myself. You know, I got a nice haircut, you know, I got some muscles, I'm good. No, it's not about the outside. It's how do you really feel in the inside? But until you take responsibility for your life, you're not going to do it.
I love that. And so what do you do? Like, I know during this, especially during this COVID, most of us are like tied up and we feel so lonely and all that. And what do you do to actually that helps you, go through your day? Is it meditation? What practices do you have, like, to keep you going and not, fall into maybe feeling like it's just too much coming on you, or even the news, or even everything that is happening globally? What do you do to keep yourself going?
What do I do personally?
Mm-hmm. Like what
Uh,
practices?
well, I don't ever get lonely. I think when you love yourself, you don't. Like I'm just always happy to work on my jewelry. I'm happy to work on my program, to read new things. You know, I read a lot on, what I do, that kind of stuff. I work out a lot. Even when the gyms were all closed, I still, bought a couple things to have at home, to work out at home. And I live in Arizona, so the pool was hot. So I was always up there working out every day too. So working out a lot to me is my medicine. I have to do it. It's just something I've done for a long enough time now that it gives me my power. Do you know what I mean? If I didn't have that, I don't know. You know what I mean? Because I've just done that for a long time, and it's really important to me. My health is very important to me. And at my age, the older you get, the more you have to stay strong. So for your bones, right? I don't want to go there and get osteoporosis and all that. But so I made sure every day I did something for working out. Then I would always do that first because that's my thing. But I kept myself really busy. My son was quarantined with me, so we did things together a lot. We'd go walking and, watch a movie or whatever. He's a film major, so he always had good stuff to watch. In fact, he got me into all the old movies that I had never seen that he loves. Elizabeth Taylor's his favorite. I don't get lonely. And I think that when people are lonely and they're looking for something somewhere else, it's because it's not in here.
All right.
So my thought to somebody who is lonely is you got some work to do. You know what I mean? And those are a lot, like my oldest daughter, she's really extroverted. She has to always be around people, It was very hard for her, but it was good for her because she learned that, you know what, I don't have to be around all these people, anymore. And so that was a little bit of reflection for herself, to learn a little bit of love for herself, that it's okay to be alone. But working out was the biggest thing for me. And then once I did that, my rest of the day just flowed. So I didn't get bored, but I live in Arizona, sunny 355 days a year. Although it's been 7 months of over 100. But today, for some weird reason, it went from 97 yesterday to 66. So it's like, whoa, this is weird, but it's not going to stay. So the sun shines here every day too. And I noticed when I moved here from the East Bay in near San Francisco, how much the sun changes everything for you. So for people who have winters to get through in those dreary, dreary days, I would highly recommend those sun lamps because it makes a huge difference.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
It makes a huge difference. So people who start to really get down in the winter,
Mm-hmm.
sun lamps. Because we have to stay inside just like you do when it's 110 here. You know what I mean? You can't go out in 115 degrees. And that's basically what our summer was all about. So I'd go to the pool early during COVID and come in and I'd have to stay. We don't even get to open our windows for 7 months because it's so hot, right? Even at the middle of the night, it's just as hot. So I would just highly recommend. I think the sun made a huge difference for me here
Mm-hmm.
when it's shining because it does change your mood, right?
It does.
Yeah. So I know a lot of people who have to deal with that who use sun lamps, and it makes a huge difference. So 20 minutes with a sun lamp on can change your whole day too.
Wow. Thanks for sharing that with us. So, what would you say, what advice would you give to your 21-year-old self?
That if you took responsibility for your life, it would have been a lot easier. I wouldn't have got myself into all the bad situations I was in by making bad choices because I wasn't worthy of a great life. So why am I getting all these bad relationships? It's all their fault, right? No, it was all mine. But honestly, I would say stop being a victim.
Stop being a victim.
I grew up with 8 brothers and sisters. There was 9 of us. And my mom and my dad and my grandmother. So I started young blaming everybody else, right? It was always their fault. I always felt like no one liked me because it was their fault, you know?
Wow. It's amazing owning up and taking your power back.
Yeah, that's the great part. Once you can take your power back, that's when you you feel amazing. You know, you don't have to let anybody walk on you anymore. You have boundaries. Boundaries aren't necessarily a good thing, but you know, you have to have them when you have self-worth. You know what I mean? And it's so nice to say, you need to go now, or something like that, because you see it and you're like, no. And then you're
Yeah.
just so proud of yourself because you just took a situation that you might have gotten into before. And you're like, no way, I'm not going to have a life like that. No, I'm good. I'm good.
Because you know it now
Oh,
and you
yeah.
have you're confident,
And you can see it a mile away. Like
right?
I'm single and I've gone out on some dates and I'm like, after the first or second date, I'm like, bye-bye. They'll talk bad about a spouse. Well, I don't want to listen to your bad about your spouse because you have too much resentment. If someone has resentment, they can't love you. If someone has resentment, their heart's not open to love you. So why would you get involved in that situation? I never knew that before. As a domestic violence survivor, I went out with some guy that got mad at me and started blowing up on me because I put this machine. I'm an art wave therapist and I was a massage therapist too. So I put this machine on and he didn't like it. He took it off and threw it and came at me. And I said, you need to go now. I'm like, nobody yells at me. Get out. And you can just see it, just like a girlfriend or your daughter. You know, my daughter can come over and act, you know, one way, and I'm like, no, we don't go here anymore. And you just
Right.
see it. You can see it, and so you don't get yourself into those situations anymore. Whereas before, my first husband, when I was very young and married, was alcoholic, and he was abusive when he drank. But I knew how much he drank before I married him. I saw it. It was a red flag. But I didn't care, you know, like red flags were like, okay, well, I can make them better. He won't drink like this all the time or whatever. We talk ourselves out of the red flags, right? Now I don't even call them red flags. I just see them. I'm like, see ya. Not doing it. And that's a great feeling when you have that power. That's a great feeling because you know you're always going to be okay, no matter what.
Yeah. I love that, and I love your confidence. You know, I love your confidence, your sharing, your openness, and speaking from your heart. And I am sure that what you've shared with us today, many will relate to this and they will take action. That is why Inside Out Alignment is here. It's for people to not just listen, but being able to also take action. Because if we just listen and don't take any action, then it's not of any use. Just like you,
Absolutely.
when you realize that, okay, there was nobody else to blame, you decided to take action. And it is only then that we can see a change when we actually move forward, and understand what our problem is. And even
I
if, go ahead.
no, I was just going to say, I think that sometimes when you're the kind of person that doesn't listen to anyone else, which I kind of am, I'm an Aquarius. I'm pretty independent, and it's got to be my way. Sometimes I'm a lot more lenient on that now, right? But it's a funny thing because um, change it's not easy. You know what I mean? It's not easy, but I think you have to suffer enough. Some people like me, and a lot of people are like me. Um, you have to suffer enough. And when you're finally sick and tired of suffering, it's what do you got left? I'm going to kill myself or I'm going to do something. And because I had these tower moments where, I was doing better and I thought I was good and something would happen and I, realized there was more work to do and more work to do. If you don't keep going, you're never going to get there. And the moment you think you're fixed, I got news for you. Life's going to throw another curveball at you, and you better have the tools, right? And that's where I was. I was like, okay, what am I going to do here now? Am I going to kill myself? Or am I going to change my life? Because I'm not living another freaking day like this. And that's the choice that I made. I'm not going to kill myself. That's not who I am. I got kids. You know what I mean? But not just that, that's not who I am. It's like I'm a strong, powerful woman. Am I going to let life take over? Am I going to let life destroy me? No, I'm ready to change. And I found the right programs, I guess, that helped me do that because I've been reading self-help books since I was 20. They just don't get you anywhere because they don't teach you all of it. Do you know what I mean? It's just one little subject. But basically everything I think that screws up your life, it's all self-love. It's all based on self-love because you wouldn't have done all these things or got in those things if you loved yourself. You didn't have the power, so you didn't listen to the red flags. Do you know what I mean? You wouldn't stay in a job you hate. You wouldn't hang around with the people you hang around with. All that has to change, and all that does change when you change. But for me, I had to suffer enough. I just couldn't take it anymore. Plus, nobody wanted to be around me. And so I was like, okay, if nobody wants to be around me, there's a problem here. It's got to be me, right? And that's when I started looking at me.
Whew.
Sorry.
Thanks for the courage for looking at you, in the very sense of it, in the very inside, looking at yourself from inside and working and putting in all the work. Because the result, I am sure your light now just, shines, your kids, they are also learning from that, which is beautiful.
Yeah.
So
I had a life coach tell me that one time. He said, you don't ever have to do anything to fix your kids. He goes, you just fix yourself and watch them change. And
definitely.
it's the truth. You know what I mean? They still have some issues about maybe something that I said from the past, like I did with my mom for a very long time. I have a daughter who's 30 and one who's 40. So I didn't really get all into all that till I started in my 50s. So they got some time.
Yeah, they'll figure that out. It's going to work. And especially having you around and seeing something else and you are living proof that that can change, you
Right.
know, and that give them the courage, will give them, you know, the reason to be like, okay, if this could happen to mom, she was able to do this. You know, we have to let go whatever has happened in the past and also work on us, because we don't want to transfer this to our own kids,
Right.
you know,
And I did. I
because
did.
when it happens like that, it becomes a chain,
Hmm.
right? It becomes a chain. And when you were talking about, you know, yelling uh, to your kids, I felt the same, because I grew up with my parents, but my father would hardly talk. My father was very loving and calm. He would hardly talk. He was just a loving one, and you could get away with everything. But my mom, don't try. You will get yourself not only whipped, but you could, if she's coming or if she went out, before she gets through the door, you hear her voice from the street. So you are already trying to figure out what to do, or what he try to get what she's saying, so you can get things together before she gets to the house.
Yeah.
And I kind of took that with me too. So with my kids, I kept realizing some, you know, some every time I want to say something or when they do something that I don't like, I'm yelling. And I kept telling myself, I'm like, I thought you didn't like this. Why are you repeating this? And then most of the time I'll tell myself, I feel like I'm just repeating a pattern in my past. I feel like I'm hearing my mom talking through me. And she lives with me. So we've always had this conversation, you know, of how we grew up. And
Yeah.
she was like, yeah, I did a lot that if I knew then, it wouldn't have happened that way. And I'm like, yes, mom. I keep trying to catch myself from repeating some of those patterns, you know. And I'm
Yeah.
like, I'm doing my best not to get in that mood. My husband and I, we try most of the time now to just to have conversations, like listen to the kid, don't just impose. And you know, and sometimes really just have to hold myself and be like, what is wrong with you? Like, something
And
is wrong with me inside. I need to work on that. You know, what is
right.
lacking? Something that is lacking in me, and I'm trying to pour it onto the kids. I need to get to the bottom of it.
Yeah, and that probably has a lot to do with criticism. You felt criticized by your mom because she was yelling, which is the same thing. My mom didn't yell, but she
Mm-hmm.
had a way of being critical. I yelled, but I was critical too. But don't ever feel afraid to say you're sorry to your kids and that you were wrong. Because when I took responsibility and I did that with my kids, they said now that they're adults, that's all they ever wanted. You know what I mean? That's all they ever wanted, for me to not so much to say I was sorry, but to own what I did. You know what I mean? And I still do it from time to time, you know, when we're on some kind of subject and I say, you know, I'll own it every time, because it's the only way you can get there and forgive yourself. Do you know what I mean? You have to take ownership of it. And I would just say to everyone, say you're sorry. It's okay. You know what I mean? That helps other people forgive you and not destroy them, because our kids our kids start getting destroyed. Like I told you, we're all born genius, right? But the one time your kid runs across the street who's 1 year old and you say, stop, don't do that. They take that as, you know, my mom doesn't like me. You know what I mean? They internalize that even at that young age, but yet we're trying to protect them, right? So don't ever feel, my advice would be don't ever feel bad. I mean, say you're sorry. That's huge.
That is true, and thanks for reminding us of about that. And and when you said that, I think was it this morning when I served them breakfast, because that I often do that. Like when we have like a moment and everything was like, you know, I said something. Even the following day, we'll sit down. I'm like, okay, guys, I'm really sorry that I said this yesterday. I was stressed, or you know, I'll give them a reason why, you know, I did that, and that's not an excuse. I should be able to, you know, not, you know, pour my anger on you guys or something like that. So today, this morning, we had an issue with my second child, and my so the first one said, why was daddy so mad? And I explained to him, I'm like, your brother pushed him a little too far. He already was in trouble, and then he kept doing the wrong things. Then he break your computer, so that made him even, got to a point where he couldn't take it anymore. And he said that scared me. I'm like, yeah, so I'm sorry that that happened that way because yeah. And I'm like, it's not that sometimes we really want to have you guys see something like that, but we are humans too. And I say, do tell you guys, I like when I tell them, if you make a mistake, if you break something, don't hide it. Let me know because I do break glasses as well. I'm a human, I make mistakes. So we have to be open to each other. So when we talked, when we were having breakfast this morning, when we talked about that, and my daughter was like, she's the 8-year-old, and she was just like, oh, mommy, I understand now. You're okay. And the others were just like, yes, that's fine, everything. And they went to class. So it's really an important thing to actually do. And even
Yeah,
with my mom, even when we recall some things, we sit down together and just forgive each other, about maybe the past and things like that, and keep it moving. Forgiveness is really huge. It's really, really huge. And thanks again for reminding us about that today and bringing that again to our awareness, how important and how big that is to us as
yeah,
individuals and as, living together as family or friends. Yeah.
exactly.
So, Mary, is there any last thoughts you want to share with us today?
I would just, I guess my only advice is, if you're blaming somebody else for anything, that's not good. You need to look inside because you have to take responsibility for your own life and your own reactions and your own responses. That's on nobody else but yourself. And don't take anything personal because it's not about you. It's about them. Just like when you got upset or when your husband got upset and was yelling, that wasn't your kid's issue, but kids internalize it, right? That was his issue for the day. He was stressed out or whatever. So, learn to not take things personal. I used to always take everything personal because, that's what you do when you don't like yourself. Everything's about you when you don't like yourself because you think that something's wrong with yourself. And then you go and you do what I did for many, many years. You sabotage your life. So if you find yourself blaming somebody else, saying, I'm so hard on myself, you know what I mean? Not taking responsibility for your actions, you don't love yourself. You got work to do. Sabotage is a huge one.
Yeah.
And most of the time we're unconscious of the sabotaging. We don't really even realize we're doing it, but that's where it all comes from inside. And triggers. When everybody says, well, that's a trigger is just unhealed work. It's stuff so you need to heal those triggers, right? You need to go in deep and say, why do I have this trigger? Oh, is it because my mom did that to me by saying that I wasn't good enough? No, my mom didn't say I wasn't good enough. That's how I internalized it, right? So you have to change those stories and work on that. But there are reasons that, anybody can come to my Facebook page, Self-Love Expressions, or at Radical Self-Love Bootcamp groups. Or no, I'm sorry, it's at Self-Love Bootcamp groups. I have a 31-day challenge that can show you that, or a quiz that you can take. But, I think everything in life, just almost everything stems from the lack of self-love. So no one can love anything or anybody if they don't love themselves. So if you find yourself in bad relationships, bad situations, it's really because you don't love yourself. And how's the world ever going to change? That's my biggest thing. All these racists and white supremacists and all the things that are going on in the world today, it's super upsetting because nobody would be racist if they loved themselves. Do you know what I mean? But they're taught hate, right? They're taught that that's wrong, and it's systemic. And you have to break the cycles, and you have to love yourself, or you're never going to be able to, the world's never going to change. There'll always be war and everything else because it's all about hate. Why do you hate? You can't hate. if all you have inside is love for yourself, because that's where it starts.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Mary. It's been a pleasure spending this great time with you. It is precious, actually, this precious time with you, and you sharing so many insights and reminding us of our power and, you know, about us taking ownership and not, pushing the blame on others. And I think most of us have a lot of that to do in our lives because if each and every one of us look internally and work from there, I think there will be lots of change and having that self-love. Thank you for the work you're doing. Thank you so much for being here to make those impact and what you're doing in your life every single day and in the life of other people. The world needs more of you, more of, people who bring this awareness and ready to make impact and let us know that we are able to take our power back. So I appreciate that, and I really, really thank you for being here and for your time, Mary. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I enjoyed it, and you asked a lot of really good questions.
Thank you.
I hope I
So,
answered them enough.
oh yes, you did. Please, you did. You did. Yeah. So, dear listeners, thanks again. At the end of on the description box of this episode, I will have Mary's contact. That is Self Love Bootcamp group on Facebook and her website as well. So you'll be able to visit her or and to get in contact with her for if you need for any help. So it's action time. It's not easy, but you do have support, and that is why she's here. She's the living proof of that change, and that we are able to go through that when we are committed, when we take the action. So it's been a great time. Thanks for taking time to listen. And we are happy that this will bring changes in the life, not only of yours, you would use the change in your life will help you or those in your world also see that change and make changes in their life. You will be of help to those in your world. So thanks again for always being there, and take care and bye for now.